One of the most important innovations in land warfare in the past decade has been the missile-armed attack helicopter. This video ordnance program will take a look at the latest in attack helicopter technology from around the world to see why the helicopter has become so potent a weapon. The world's first attack helicopter was the United States Army's Bell AH-1 Cobra. The Cobra was developed during the Vietnam War on the basis of the legendary UH-1 Huey transport helicopter. The Huey could be armed with guns and rockets and was often used in the gunship role during the Vietnam War. But this was an improvisation. By redesigning the forward fuselage of the Huey, its effectiveness in the attack role could be considerably increased. This led to the Cobra. The Cobra pioneered the classic attack helicopter configuration. In the forward cockpit is the co-pilot gunner, and in the rear cockpit is the pilot. This tandem configuration results in a sleeker fuselage than the conventional transport helicopters, permitting greater speed and aerodynamic performance. The Soviets followed the United States example with their Mi-24 Hind attack helicopter. In the 1970s, the role of the Cobra shifted. The early versions were armed primarily with machine guns and rockets. The advent of more effective guided anti-tank missiles, such as the American TOW, greatly expanded the importance of attack helicopters. Helicopters were ideal anti-tank missile carriers. Their mobility in the air allowed them to exploit terrain to find the best location for launching missiles. Tank hunting became one of their primary missions.
The attack helicopter, because of its ability to break the friction with the ground and get up and fly at 100 miles per hour, in excess of 100 miles per hour, and project that combat power forward, is the most significant contribution that the attack helicopter brings to the battlefield. If you think about it, if you're advancing on an enemy with tanks and you run into a river, your progress basically stops unless you've got a river crossing operation ready to be implemented. With the attack helicopter, you don't need to worry about that, and you're capable of going across the river and influencing the battle on the other side of that obstacle until such time as the ground forces can catch up with you. So the flexibility, the speed, moving out in excess of 100 miles per hour to the target area, rapidly identifying it and engaging it in total darkness is a significant capability.
The technology that made tank hunting possible was the wire-guided anti-tank missile. On the AH-1 Cobra, the TOW missile is used. A very similar missile is the HOT, built in Germany and France. When fired, these missiles trail a very thin copper wire behind them. This wire is amazingly tough in spite of its thinness. The wire serves as a link between the guidance system on the helicopter and the control surfaces on the missile. The gunner on the helicopter keeps the tank in his sight, and by using a small control, the guidance system steers the missile precisely towards the target. The attack helicopter has also had its impact on marine operations. The Sea Cobra is a marine variant of the Army's AH-1 Cobra. The Sea Cobra saw extensive combat with marine helicopter squadrons during Operation Desert Storm. The Marine Cobras differ from their Army counterparts in having different engines and other features, since they often operate in a very different environment. The Marine squadrons operate either from Navy amphibious assault ships or from land bases. Sea Cobras and their improved variants form the backbone of marine attack helicopter units. One of the latest improvements in marine attack helicopters is the more powerful AH-1W Super Cobra. The Super Cobra can fire either the TOW or the newer Hellfire anti-tank missile. In the U.S. Army, the Cobra is still used, even though more advanced attack helicopters such as the Apache are now in service. The Cobra saw extensive use with cavalry squadrons during Operation Desert Storm. It is still a very effective combat helicopter for many roles. Attack helicopters bridge the gap between armored vehicles and jet strike aircraft. They have greater mobility and speed than armored vehicles, even though they lack their armor protection. They cannot carry as much ordnance as fast and as far as strike aircraft, but their rotor propulsion allows them to be operated from the forward edge of the battlefield. Combat helicopters are often part of the Army rather than the Air Force. This close connection between the helicopters and the ground forces make them particularly well suited in the dangerous business of carrying out close air support missions in close proximity to friendly forces. A good example of this is the U.S. Army's latest attack helicopter, the Apache.
The AH-64 is the ground commander's weapon. He has it living with him, breathing with him. We're integrated into his plan in every way, shape, and form. We know how he thinks. We know how to anticipate where he will best employ us. You don't get that from a close air support aircraft showing up, reporting in on station, and then engaging targets. You have no idea of the man's concept, if you will, for the future. So having us immediately available gives you the 30-minute string, the on-call capability. It also gives you a great amount of flexibility. As I mentioned before, with this aircraft you can conduct surveillance, reconnaissance, armed reconnaissance, a variety of missions. You asked an Air Force pilot to do that, and I don't think you'd get that kind of support.
The 1980s saw the deployment of the first attack helicopter designed from the outset for the anti-tank role. This was the AH-64 Apache. The Apache was designed to fight and survive on the modern battlefield. A new generation of missiles, missile guidance, and advanced sensors gave the Apache unprecedented long-range firepower. The advantages enjoyed by second-generation attack helicopters such as the Apache would become very clear in the battles of Operation Desert Storm.
I generally have experience with both the Cobras and the Apaches. I will tell you that the Apache is probably 10 times the aircraft that the Cobra is, merely because it can stand off at great distances with superior optics, 122 power optics, and strike targets from as far as 8 kilometers away. You don't get that comparison when you start talking about the Cobra. Not to say that the Cobra doesn't contribute to what goes on the battlefield. The combination, in fact, of a Cobra type attack unit up close, blunting the nose, if you will, of an enemy armor column, and then bringing in Apaches to the flanks, standing off and killing things is a great combination. I think that the taxpayers' money was well spent on this machine. Its capability to stand off outside the capability of the enemy to see us, number one, and number two, engage us, is just phenomenal. In the case of the Ramallah oil field battle, we started our initial engagements at 6,700 meters out. Those forces never knew who was engaging them. And by the time we took out our 5th or 6th T-72 tank, they generally got the idea that that was not a good place to be, and they left.
At the center of the Apache's weapon systems is the Hellfire missile. The Hellfire is laser-guided rather than wire-guided. Older wire-guided missiles have a maximum range of about 2 miles due to the length of the wire that can be carried. The Hellfire's range is more than double. This is made possible by its unique guidance system. A laser designator mounted in the nose is aimed at the target and fires an invisible beam of intense light at the enemy tank. The seeker in the head of the Hellfire can sense the laser light being reflected off the target. It homes in on this laser reflection with pinpoint precision. This longer range is a critical advantage for helicopters.
Right on. Give me another one.
This allows the helicopters to attack from positions more than 5 miles away from the enemy. By attacking at standoff ranges, the Apache minimizes its own vulnerabilities to enemy defenses and maximizes its own advantages.
Another missile, please. 1-4, spot on.
The Hellfire missile, I get ranges out in excess of 8 kilometers if I need it. Just like with any kind of battlefield system, I want to use the weapon that keeps me as far away from the bad guy as possible. And if I can hit him at 8 kilometers with my Hellfire, I can stop at 8 kilometers. He can't even see me at 8 kilometers. If I need to use my rockets, because it's a light-skinned vehicle, I switch to a smaller punch weapon system, my rockets, which have flexibility of being a high explosive round, a dual-purpose submunition round, which is both anti-personnel and anti-vehicle. Now I can use the cannon. The cannon I like to use for close in to protect me and my helicopter, protect the other helicopters around me. But it's got a good range out to about 4,000 meters, and it's good for punching holes in lightly skinned vehicles. So it's a combination of range and target, and also based on what weapon systems you have left.
The Apache is designed not only to engage tanks, but other types of targets as well. So it is armed with a variety of other types of weapon systems. Under the nose of the helicopter is a 30mm chain gun, which can be used against lightly armored vehicles. On the stub wings are unguided rockets for attacking targets with high explosive. Helicopters are large and noisy. To minimize the visibility of the Apache to enemy forces, it was designed to operate at night. The two unusual devices on the nose of the Apache are the Target Acquisition and Designation System, or TADS, used to aim and target the Apache's weapons, and the Pilot Night Vision System, or PNVS, used by the pilot to fly the aircraft at night.
The majority of the weapon systems are sighted through the TAD system, which is mounted on the nose of the aircraft. That is basically controlled very similar to a Nintendo game with a thumb force controller. The Hellfire missiles are sighted through that primarily, either with the laser designator through this aircraft or another aircraft.
Both the nose-mounted sensors contain forward-looking infrared sights, or FLIR for short. The FLIR works like a television camera, but senses heat rather than light. The super-cooled sensor of the FLIR can detect a few degrees of temperature difference between objects, making it an ideal night sight. The advantages of night flying became apparent to the Apache crews who flew during Operation Desert Storm.
Of course, when you're flying in the day, you can see outside, and that's all fine and dandy, but also they can see you. In the beginning of the ground war phases and the pre-ground war phases, all of our missions were conducted at night, and I thought that was a great advantage because there were times where we couldn't even see each other, and I know that they couldn't see us, so we were fairly safe.
Flying an attack helicopter at high speeds, at low altitude, and in a hostile environment is difficult and risky. To make it easier for the crew to handle all their tasks in such a fast-paced environment, special features were built into the Apache. One of the most remarkable of these is the crew's special helmet.
This is called the IHADS Integrated Helmet and Display System. It's a rather actually sophisticated and expensive piece of equipment that was developed in concert with the Apache to utilize some of the systems on the Apache, mainly the Pilot Night Vision System, the 30mm chain gun cannon, and the TADS. Any of these systems can be slaved to the helmet, and by slaved, what I mean by that is that you can take these systems and where the pilot is looking, make the weapon system and or sensor look where the pilot or co-pilot gunner is looking. This is the HDU, Helmet Display Unit. This is similar to what the Air Force has in their aircraft up on their glare screen. It's a HUD, heads-up display unit, except this mounts into our helmet. Works very well. Roll it down in front of the eye. We have a crosshair on here that allows us to look in the direction of our target, place the crosshairs on said target, and that's where the rounds should strike the target.
The combination of advanced sensors and viewing aids gives the AH-64 Apache 24-hour capability. It can operate and fight day or night, and in conditions that would ground most other aircraft.
Initially in the training, it was kind of a stressful thing to learn to fly because it is so far removed from, say, flying goggles in a Cobra or something like that. I flew Cobras for a few years in Europe, and so I can relate them. But once you get the training down and understand how to use the system, the information that it provides you just adds a huge margin of safety there as far as adverse weather capabilities and just things that goggles don't provide. The symbology, the weapons symbology and flight symbology is just takes a tremendous amount of workload off of you because you don't have to reference inside for anything. Everything's right there organized for you. So I would say technology is working on my side greatly as far as reducing some of that workload.
New man-portable missiles have appeared on the battlefield since the 1970s, which pose a growing threat to combat helicopters. The Apache was designed to minimize its vulnerabilities to these weapons. It is equipped with 2 engines, so that if one is disabled, the aircraft can continue to fly. Its engines are shrouded to reduce their heat signature, making it more difficult for heat-seeking missiles to track them. Electronic sensors give the crew warnings if radar-directed guns or missiles are being aimed at them, so that the anti-radar protection systems can be activated. The Apache was even designed to withstand machine gun fire using unique composite materials in its fuselage, armor for the crew, and special features in its rotor design. These features are enhanced by the tactics the crew can use.
Technology and tactics is exactly the combination we use. The Apache's has improved technology as far as low infrared signature. We have aircraft survivability equipment, ACE equipment on the aircraft, everything from radar jammers to IR jammers, chaff and flare dispensers. We have an APR-39, a radar warning system that allows me or tells the air crew that somebody's looking at me or somebody's in acquisition or somebody's in track mode. Use all that technology, and then you use the tactics of the helicopter and Army helicopters of flying low, staying close to the terrain, using terrain to put terrain between myself and an enemy force, using speed where appropriate, or the opposite of that, using low speed where appropriate. So I don't go blundering into an enemy force. I use low speed, low altitude to find holes around an enemy defense and work my way around an area.
The Apache was battle-tested in the Gulf War. It proved to meet or exceed the expectations of its crews. In several key battles, it demonstrated quite clearly the impact that a small force of helicopters could have in a land war. Missile copters, preceding the main tank attacks, were able to break up the Iraqi formations. Under a ceaseless barrage of deadly Hellfire missiles, the Iraqi armor units disintegrated.
Direct hit. Target destroyed. Give us another one. We'll go to the left of it. Yeah, good shooting, babe. Target destroyed. And Roger, send in a missile now.
Roger, on target.
One more, please. And I need a grid for missiles now.
The Gulf War also witnessed the development of new tactics for helicopter warfare. Even with its impressive defensive features, the Apache crew still must be wary of enemy forces with the deadly shoulder-fired missile. One tactic demonstrated in the Gulf was the combination of attack helicopters and scout helicopters. The smaller scout helicopters are the eyes and ears of the team. The Apache is the muscle. The scouts keep an eye out for enemy missile teams, while the Apache crew concentrates on targeting enemy positions. The scouts can also perform another function. Armed with an air-to-air version of the Stinger missile, they can protect the attack helicopter unit from enemy helicopters.
We use it for security missions with the attack helicopters, the Apaches. When they go into their battle position, they're not aware of what's going on around them as far as other air-to-air threats. And we are there to provide them support in case any fast movers or other helicopters come in. We're able to engage with an air-to-air missile.
The latest version of the Apache is codenamed Longbow. The bulbous sensor mounted on the top of the rotor assembly is a millimeter wave radar. This sensor expands the all-weather capabilities of the Apache even beyond FLIR sensors. It also permits the use of a new generation of fire-and-forget Hellfire missiles using millimeter wave guidance. This Hellfire will not need laser designation, but can home in on the target using its onboard sensor. This combination of advanced technology and novel tactics makes the Apache attack helicopter one of the most potent weapons in modern land warfare. The success of attack helicopters like the Cobra and Apache has inspired similar helicopter programs around the world. Probably the least known of these is the Rooivalk, developed in South Africa. The South African Defence Forces were prompted to develop a sophisticated attack helicopter due to their combat experiences with troop helicopters in the 1980s, especially the fighting in Angola.
We have found that without the helicopter, we could not have won the war. And I think this is a fact that has been brought out in low-intensity conflicts right throughout the world. Now, with the advent of the Rooivalk, we can now improve on the flexibility, inherent flexibility of a helicopter and expand our concept of operations to provide firepower to the ground commander in the field. The design of the Rooivalk is intended as an anti-armor aircraft, but because of our circumstances in the Southern African scenario where we have low-intensity conflicts, the aircraft has also been designed to fulfill other roles such as escort of transport helicopters and to a certain extent provide firepower for autonomous Air Force operations.
The layout of the Rooivalk is the classical configuration with a two-man crew. One of the differences between the Rooivalk and the Apache is the cockpit layout. The Apache uses a single canopy, while on the Rooivalk, the canopy is split. Unlike the Apache, the pilot sits in the front cockpit and the weapons officer in the rear.
The pilot obviously flies and navigates largely, while the co-pilot weapon system operator, as the term implies, does the management of the weapon system, the actual aiming, the firing, etc. He can operate the weapons independently. He can also fly the helicopter, should he be required to do this, because he has a full flying station, full flight controls in the front cockpit as well. And in fact, the pilot can, should the need arise, also operate the weapon systems.
The armament system of the Rooivalk is similar to the Apache's. The Rooivalk takes advantage of new computer interfaces to permit the mounting of a wide variety of weapons options depending on the mission. Although the basic conception of the Rooivalk is very similar to the Apache, it differs in many details to make it better suited to operating in the African environment. Its design follows the Apache by almost a decade, which enabled its developers to incorporate several new technologies.
I certainly think it could be a trendsetter from a number of perspectives. To give you a few examples, I think that whereas the American systems are generally designed to be operated in a highly supportive environment with a lot of logistic support, our terrain and our environment has required of us to design it to be far less dependent upon such support. It is better suited, we think, to operation over long distances, better suited to a requirement for mobility, poorly developed infrastructure. Another example would be the sand filter systems, which have been integrated in the design from day one, which is again uniquely suited to this type of environment that one would find in dry, dusty areas.
One of the areas where the Royfolk incorporates new features is its avionics. Advances in electronics have permitted a number of new features to be added to aid the pilot.
The handling qualities of the basic aeroplane are very similar to the handling qualities that one would find on helicopters of this class. What we are developing for the Royfolk is a special electronic control system or augmentation system which will vastly improve the handling qualities of the aircraft in the nap of the earth or low-level environment, which is the environment in which the airplane will spend most of its life. And this system will make the aircraft particularly well suited to easy piloting during operational type sorties.
The Royfolk is the most sophisticated aircraft ever developed in Africa and displays a level of technological sophistication found in European or American designs. The effort that went into this helicopter is clear evidence of the growing importance of the helicopter in contemporary military operations. Western Europe never built attack helicopters of the first generation like the Cobra. Instead, European aviation firms have awaited the second generation. Italy was the first to enter this field with the Augusta Mangusta. The Mangusta, or Mongoose, fits between the Cobra and Apache. It enjoys the advances in avionics and propulsion of the current generation of attack helicopters, but it is smaller and lighter than the Apache. Copter Tiger is the first attack helicopter program in Western Europe to rival the Apache in sophistication, size, and power. It is being developed as a cooperative effort between France and Germany by the Eurocopter Consortium. The Tiger will be built in different variants to satisfy the requirements of the two armed forces.
This system will be employed by the French Army and the German Army in two quite distinct roles. The first version is called HAC in France and PAH-2 in Germany. It will serve in the day and night anti-tank role. The HAP version, which is being ordered exclusively for the French Army, will provide defensive support for the ground troops, as well as combat against enemy helicopters, and eventually even against aircraft.
Attack helicopters are increasingly important on the modern battlefield. When a rapid reaction force is needed for today's high-speed maneuver warfare, the call goes out for the missile copter.